My name is Madeleine Kennedy-Macfoy. So I'm going to be moderating on her behalf. And I'd like to start by thanking the different partners that made it possible for this event to take place and listing them in alphabetical order. A big thanks to the Africa Platform of Ghent University Association, to the Bozar, to the Brussels Center for Urban Studies, the Center for Literary and Intermediate Crossings of the VUB, the European Network Against Racism, and the European Parliament's Anti-Racism and Diversity Intergroup. So this event, Afropolitan Women and Black Europe at the European Parliament. The motivation came in the wake of the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis in May last year and of Breonna Taylor earlier in the year. We saw that tens of thousands of people took to the streets of European towns and cities in solidarity with the tens of thousands who marched to protest yet another brutal killing of a Black man by the police and the wider, long-lasting crisis of police violence targeting Black bodies in the United States. But protesters on this side of the oceans were not only marching in solidarity with African Americans, they also marched to protest the persistent racial profiling, police brutality, and racial discrimination experienced by Black and racialized people in European countries. Black lives matter everywhere. Young Black people took to the streets to express their discontent with political and legal establishments that still refuse to look squarely into the mirror of European colonial legacies and present-day structural and institutionalized racism in European societies. This was a moment of reckoning in Europe, of its past and future relations with Black communities. More than 15 million people of African descent live in Europe, and there is a long-standing tradition of political activism within Black communities in Europe. But this hasn't always been channeled into political institutions, especially at the supranational level. The question of how Black communities in Europe can effectively work together across geographical borders, across language barriers, and through institutional configurations that exclude them is posed once again by a new generation. So we may ask ourselves, what is the role of the European Parliament in all of this? Well, first of all, there is the big issue of underrepresentation. Only 3% of the current MEPs are people of color, and only a handful out of the Parliament's 705 members are Black women of African descent. This afternoon, we have the pleasure and the honor of speaking with some of those women. Pierrette Herzberger-Fofona is here in Hall M with us, and Samira Rafaela and Monica Semedo will join us via Zoom. So Dr. Pierrette Herzberger-Fofona is the first woman of African descent to run for political office in Germany and to be elected to the European Parliament as the German Green Party candidate. In the Parliament, she's Vice Chair of the Committee on Development and of the Delegation for Relations with the Pan-African Parliament. She's co-chair of the Anti-Racism and Diversity Intergroup and substitute member of the Committee on Women's Rights and Gender Equality. Dr. Herzberger-Fofona was awarded the Helene Weber Prize for her commitment to human rights and the fight to end gender-based violence in Germany. Samira Rafaela on screen is a Dutch MEP for the Social Liberal political party D66. She is part of the Renew Europe group and a member of the Committee on Women's Rights and Gender Equality. Samira is also a member of the Committees on International Trade, Employment and Social Affairs and Human Rights. She is co-president of the Parliament's Anti-Racism and Diversity Intergroup. Prior to her election, Samira advised the Dutch police force on inclusion and diversity. And our third MEP, at the age of 12, Monica Semedo was talent scouted at a Luxembourgish singing contest. Soon after, she became a TV presenter on RTL, where she stayed for more than 20 years. Monica attended the University of Trier, where she obtained a master's degree in political science and Spanish and Russian philology. In 2019, Monica was elected member of the European Parliament, where she joined the Renew Europe group. So Samira is going to be able to stay with us for the first hour, so I'm going to turn to her first. So we get a sense of their individual personal journeys. How did they come to be where they are today? Samira, what made you aspire to become an MEP?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to everyone. So yes, I am of course very glad that I became a member of the European Parliament, since this was pretty much my dream since I was 16 years old. And my mother brought me to Brussels one time, and I was very impressed by all these important looking buildings. And when asking her what they do inside these buildings, she explained to me, well, they do something with world peace and politics. And it right away inspired me. And I said, well, this is really what I want to do, because I came from a family that is very diverse. I grew up with a very diverse background and diverse identity, but at the same time, I realized already in a very early stage of my life that my parents were not always being treated equally because of who they are, how they looked. But also, I myself at a certain point experienced exclusion, discrimination, racism, also when having education or going to school. And I realized, well, this is a thing that happens to a lot of people, and this is why I want to be in politics. And the European Parliament is the best environment for me, where we, in essence, work on legislation that daily affects people's life, but also because of the very diverse environment, that is a very natural environment for me to live and work in.
Thank you. I don't know, is Monica there on screen as well to answer the same question? Thank you for joining us. So I was asking what was the motivation, what inspired you to start the journey towards becoming an MEP?
Yeah, I'm coming from Luxembourg, and Luxembourg is a multilingual, multicultural country with 170 nations living peacefully together. And this peacefully is very important. So in fact, Luxembourg is like a small size Europe. And so that's where I grew up. I grew up also in a town where you have many nationalities, people with migrant background, Luxembourgers, and we live good together. And for Luxembourg, it's one of the seats. It's one of the seats of the European Union, so of the European Parliament. And the council is regularly here. And Luxembourg's prosperity comes from the European Union. That's a fact. So it's vice versa. We need a European Union, and the European Union also needs a small country like Luxembourg that is very open-minded. And personally, I believe in a strong European Union, in the values, and that we have to keep them up. I'm living in Grevenmacher, so Germany is like 50 meters away. And during the pandemic, we have seen that the European Union is very important. But also before, I had that feeling. I wrote a text when I was 8 years old saying, we have different people with different backgrounds in my class, but we are all playing together. What I wanted to say was, we are all the same. We all feel the same. We are together. We are a team. And that's, I know it's in me. It's in me, this European passion. And I really wanted to transpose what I hear in the streets from people, transpose into the European Parliament, on the files we work at, and in the plenary. And that's why for me it was quite natural to candidate for the European elections. And I could also already do my efforts, may it be the imminent aids, state aids, and financing, fighting the pandemic, like React-EU or Next Generation EU, but also the youth guarantee, because the youth is affected very hard by the pandemic. And it's always better to have a European solution, because we have seen during the pandemic, for example, we did not know there would become a pandemic, but we did not know. But you see that if a country fights alone, it's hard. It's better if we are all together. For example, right now I'm working on the European-wide minimum wage, which will also affect lives of people, many people in the European Union. So this is my motivation. I'm coming from a socioeconomic difficult background. I had chances and opportunities to grow. And I want others to have these chances and opportunities throughout Europe. Because we say, the slogan is united in diversity. So let's live that diversity. Let's make it real. Let's make it real in not only in our society, but also in the EU institutions and the laws. And that's very important to me. And that's why it was very natural to candidate. And I was the lead candidate. And I'm very honored that I have this beautiful task to represent European citizens.
Great, thank you. And for you, Pierrette, what motivated you to embark on the journey?
First of all, thank you very much for this invitation. I'm very delighted to be here. And to answer to your question, I have to say that I was a local councillor in Erlangen in Germany for 15 years. And I think that the logical consequence of my political commitment to make it at the level, at the continental level, at the European level, after working so many years in my city in Germany, where I came to be a teacher, to be a professor at that time, really. I wanted to be a university professor because at that time, the department of Germany, the German department, were coming to Senegal, to Dakar. It was until that time in Côte d'Ivoire, in Abidjan. And it was quite sure if I study in Germany and I want to be a professor, I'm going to get the job. Yes, it was really sure for me. At that time, we don't have a lot of unemployment. It's not like now. And when I was in Germany, I was very committed in many organizations, women organizations, and I have been also many times invited here in the European Parliament because I was in a big organization for Germany against FGM, as a female genital mutilation, and I was as expert here 2 times, and I think if I can come here to speak, so it might be better if I am here. so I think that's a logical consequence. If each time when they need somebody to speak about genital mutilation, about racism, about this and about women in Africa and so on, so I can make it. So because 15 years to be a local councillor is a very, very long time. I know the politics, what happened in Germany. I know the country. I know I have studied in Germany, in Trier too. Also in Trier, yes. Also in Trier. It was my first appointment at the university. It was in Trier, yes. And I think since I was involved in so many decades in such topics, what I have said just now, I wanted to be a MP. And I have to say, but I candidate also before. I candidate for the parliament in Bundestag 2017. And so I didn't succeed, as you see. But I think at the European level, it might be better, and I had much more the possibility to do something, you know. I could open my vision that at the continental level, at a larger scale, much more than just in Germany. Of course, Germany is a big country, that's the biggest country from Europe, 82 million people, very powerful. But to be at the European level, you can give your voice to 27 countries and even much more. There are much more old countries who are not on the European Parliament, who are not represented, but they know what happened. And I had the vision, maybe it's a dream, to say if I have paved the way, yes, and if at the end of my mandate, I can say, oh, a lot of young people are really interested to enter in politics and to continue what I have started, at least in Germany. I can say that for Germany, I don't know for the other country, because in Germany that's the big problem, that we have very, very few black women who are committed. Yes, is incredible, but because that's the biggest country, but the black women who are really committed, even in the organization, are not so strong, like France or Netherlands and so on. Yes, and myself also, maybe I can add it, I come from a very diverse origin, since my parents are coming from different countries. I said my father is coming from Guinea and my mother from Cabo Verde, like you. And then I grew up in Senegal, but I was born in Mali. I had this Pan-African, vision that the continent, the big continent, the African continent, and the European continent have to work together if you want to change, if you want to have an equal society in the world. And we can do it if we are here. If we are here in Europe, we can work in this way. Yeah, that's my vision. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that's what's really interesting, what's really struck me about what the three of you have said about your journey into the parliament, is that it was a natural step. Not many people would think of black women in the European Parliament as having made a choice that was a natural choice to them, whether it's natural because of your lived experience and awareness of injustice, natural because it was the next professional step for you, natural because you grew up in a place where you saw diversity in a positive light. It was natural for you to be in the Parliament, and it's natural for us to see you there. Thank you. I'd like to ask now, secondly, back to you, Samira. Having said that it's a natural step for you to go in there, naturally you must also meet some obstacles and opportunities there in the Parliament. What have you experienced?
Oh, yes, of course. I mean, I remember the first day when stepping into the European Parliament, and I was looking around and I noticed, of course, right away that not many people were looking like me. So I was like, okay, so how am I going to do this? Because this is going to be a difficult time. Because you already know and feel that you will be this usual suspect when, for example, putting topics like racism, discrimination, exclusion on the agenda. And these were for me very, of course, personally, very important topics. And I decided already during my campaign that this will be part of my political agenda. So the very first step I did right away in 2019 when I was elected was to become the co-president of the Anti-Racism and Diversity Intergroup together with Pierrette. This was for me a very first important decision to make sure that I have also a legitimate position to put these topics on the agenda and also in my group so that it would not be, oh, you are only the usual suspect, but also because you have the legitimate position to constantly talk about it. And what I found, of course, very, very difficult sometimes is that you are dealing with this establishment where people really are protecting their own status quo and their own position. And what is, of course, also disappointing in a way, because you see that they're very much focused on keeping the power and not very willing to share the power with people that look different and are different. So first of all, when I announced my candidacy for the European Parliament elections, I right away got, these nasty racist comments on social media. So I knew from the beginning that it would be a difficult time as a candidate, but let alone if I would enter the European Parliament. And I remembered also that within the 3 months that I was a member of European Parliament, I was terribly attacked in a racist way in the Netherlands on social media when I posted my visit to Washington and when I posted a picture together with Ilan Omar, part of the squad in the USA. And that really got me off guard for like 1 week time because I felt very censored. I did not dare to tweet anymore. At a certain point, I was like, "Are you crazy? Like, come on, this is also your space." So these are examples of what I experienced, like within 3 months that I was a member of the European Parliament, and in the European Parliament itself, I of course experienced being underestimated from the very first beginning. So even before you prove to be a good negotiator or you prove to be good in anything, people already question whether you are the right person in place. Also because I'm young, I'm a woman, and a woman of color. So you have like these three things that can cause the toxic cocktail. And I also remembered that it was only recently that I had a very, I believe, a very awful discussion in the parliament with the security guards because I was being profiled. The security guard wanted me to identify as a member of the European Parliament because he didn't believe I was a member of the European Parliament when leaving the exit that was only meant for the MEPs. And I was like, if this exit wasn't meant for me, I wouldn't even go through this exit. And he walked after me and like sorry, this is my, so he walked after me and he asked me 2 times, "Can I see your badge, your badge?" And before I even entered the exit, he already pointed to me that I needed to go to the other exit meant for staff or whatever. So, this is still my life in the European Parliament. And of course, we are also dealing with members of European parliaments that have this anti-migration agenda that are guilty of hate speech in the parliament. Pierrette and I and other co-presidents of ARDI already have written a couple of letters about hate speech, also towards Sassoli, the president of the European Parliament, because we could hear that also our colleagues in the European Parliament use language that is really terrible and that is racist and discriminative. So these are examples of what you experience, being underestimated, being excluded, people trying to exclude you from, important decision making beforehand, or, they have these hidden, these secret meetings, so that you cannot get the information, for example. So as someone who is not part of the norm, that counts for Monica, that counts for Pierrette. So for someone who is not part of the norm yet, and not the usual face of power, you need to be very creative and very well focused on building coalitions and making sure that you get information either through route A or route B, because there are people, unfortunately, still in this parliament trying to exclude you on purpose from very important decision making.
Wow. Wow. I'm going to come back to some of what you said. But first, I'll invite Monica to also share what have been some of the obstacles, barriers, and opportunities that you've encountered in the parliament.
Thank you. I'm being honest. I was a public figure since I was 7 years old. So I have another career behind me. I was a singer, I was a TV anchor and journalist. So on national TV, people knew me. And then I was approached and asked to be lead candidate and to run for the European elections. And I know, I'm very aware that this is rare and very special, because I know that other people face that want to get engaged in politics face much more problems and obstacles they have to circumvent. I'm in contact with another Black female politician. She's very engaged, but sometimes she just got stopped, and she doesn't understand why. But she understands why. It's she's not the norm. She's not the norm. And as a Black female politician or engaged in politics, you have to attract. It's more difficult to attract more voters than if you are the norm. That's a fact. That's a fact. But I just know people have difficulties to find a workplace, to find housing, even in education. There is discrimination. So these are all obstacles, especially education, are obstacles in order to get engaged later on in politics. That's my opinion. And honestly speaking, I was appointed co-lead candidate. And due to my experience or the work I did for 22 years in entertainment, but also, as Samira said, the underestimation. I'm still young, looking young. I'm still young. I'm young. I'm a woman. I'm Black, and I have an entertainment, but serious entertainment. I mean, journalism is serious, but it's entertainment as well. Background, and I had to prove each and everyone I met that I got the skills to cope with what we are doing in the European Parliament. And other candidates, they just ask, how are you? Oh, yeah, you got my voice. In my case, it was, what do you know about that? What do you know about that? So they always put me on proof. If I have the capabilities to do my work in Parliament. And I think, especially in employment and the working space, many women, first of all, but also women of ethnic minorities, have to prove double, triple that they are capable in order to keep the job. That's problematic. I always felt I have to be more flexible than others, more professional than others, more pedantic than others, in order to keep my place as a journalist and TV host, and I was. So that's my personal experience, and I think I share that with many others. But we have to make changes. We have to make changes and to give more opportunities in order that the diversity we live in is really reflected. And these are the national lists of the list of the national parties. Mm-hmm. They should open up. They have to open up. If they don't get it, they will lose. They will lose voters, because I think the citizens are fed up. They want to be represented. That's what we are doing as well. But there has to be more diversity on the election lists.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Pierrette?
I'm sorry. What they said, although I can just say, okay, that's true. It's like that. And all my life, I had to prove I am the best. I am better than everybody. And that's why I had something that's very bad, I think, for my assistant. I work too much. Too much, yes. Oh, really, I know that. But you know, by the time I started to work, first of all, at the university, there were no Black, even students in Trier, for example, and in Munich too. There were no black women when I started. So I was always the only one. Everywhere the only one, the only one. At the university, it was in Trier, it was in Erlangen, it was in Nuremberg, it was in Bayreuth, it was in Munich, everywhere. And each time, to be always the one is a lot of challenges, you know. I never had the opportunity to have a colleague to ask how you make it. Can you give me advice and something? And that's why I am so glad that I have, for the first time in my life, I have colleagues, I share the same identity. It was, I think for me, it was the beautiful thing when I came, and I thought, oh, there are another one. Oh, there are another one. Because I never had any colleague, black colleague, at the university, at the school, anywhere, and in the party. When the Green Party said it's a very big party, open, but there's no black. No black. So I am sorry. I said I am a black, but I am a bit older as all those beautiful women and MPs. I worked 35 years. I never had a black colleague in nothing. In anywhere where I was. I was always the only one. And it was a real challenge because everybody think, oh, what are you doing here? Is it your place? Is it right? How you came here? Always the same question you had. For example, when I candidate, I prepared. That's why I learned to be each time very good prepared everywhere I go because I think, oh, I know there's somebody who is going to ask something I don't know, for example. I don't know. So, for example, I don't know anything about cars. I can just drive my car, but more than I cannot. But I expect each time somebody is going to have a tricky question to me. And that's why yes, I know that. It's like that all the time. It was at the university, it was at the school, it was in the party. When I candidate, I had some question, even I said my question are women, discrimination, social equality for everybody, but be sure if somebody is going to ask me about economic, for example. But even I said, that's my focus. Please don't ask me about economic because my son, yes, make a comic, but no, I don't know anything about it. And you know, when all your life you had this challenge, you develop something that I think is bad. I don't know if my assistant said that I work too much. Yeah? Because I have always, in my mind, even if I say, so now you are an MP, you don't have anything to prove. If somebody is not happy with you, that's his problem. But I know in my mind, oh no, you have to be good prepared. Even for some groups meeting where nobody prepare anything, and I have my paper, I have everything, and I know what the agenda, and so on, and so on. Okay, maybe it's bad, but it's also good, because I know when I do something, I can do it. And if you try to disturb me and something else, it's not possible. And if I find it's not, you try to disturb me or you go with your tricky question, I said properly, I am sorry, it's not my agenda. I don't know that, I am sorry. And that I told you before, please keep on the agenda. So, and I think that's really important, and how I said, I'm so happy that we are 6 black women, although black, female, and so on, and I am the oldest. I know that. Everybody knows my my age, since it was, you know, what happened, everything. So, yes. And what Samira said, I had such a problem experience. Such stupid, for example, I asked somebody, I wanted to go the first time. It was a canteen, and I heard it's a restaurant, for example. And I asked, where the restaurant for the MP? And somebody said, oh, my dear, you don't have the money to go there. Oh. I said, how you know that?
Wow.
How you know what I have in my pocket?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, for example, and that's, I was huh? I just asked, where is the MP restaurant?
Yeah.
And I am sure that some experienced, no white women is going to have something, to ask where the MP restaurant. She get as answer, you don't have money for that.
No.
Yeah, that's the problem I got with the police too. That's the same. I am sure women in my age will be treated in another way.
Different way.
Yes,
Yeah.
a very different way. It's not a physical violence, because I had physical violence. I didn't say that on that time, but I was also physically with violence.
Assaulted. Yeah.
Took me on the here and to push me on the is a violence from two men.
Yeah.
And I am sure women in my age never had that experience. Yes, at least it's because she's no more 20 or 17 somewhere. It's not a child. So that's the type of experience. And at the parliament, how Samira said, is true. Sometimes we don't get the information. And we have always to ask for the information. To ask, and if you, for example, when I said I wanted to be the vice president, no, it might be another one because this, and so I'm sorry. So I want to be the vice president of development. And I think I have the capacity because I have worked 15 years in politics. Nobody from you get such experience here. And I have, sometimes it's not so, you don't feel well, because you have always to say, I have made this, I have made that. Even if I don't like that, I don't like to push my person on the first, in the front to say, I have made this. But you have to say that. Yeah. I have to say, I have 15 years politics in a parliament, in a communal, local parliament. I have made this and this and this and this. The development, I am coming from 4 countries, African countries. I know the history of black people, the Caribbean and so on, and I think I can be the first vice president. Sorry. It might be that somebody is always making photos from somebody who is a migrant, who is starving and so on, but I have the experience from the country, and I have the connection too. And I think that's something that people forget sometimes. And I really agree with all what they said both. Just Monica had another Lebenslauf? Experience.
Thank you. What you've all described, the living whilst occupying the intersectional positions of being black, being women, being younger, being older, wiser, and being considered to be what academics have called bodies out of space, almost like you're aliens arriving from another planet. Nobody's expecting you, and when they see you, they're shocked, they're questioning you, you having to prove over and over and over and over and over and over again what you're capable of. It makes me think this phrase, black girl magic. There's nothing magical about it. It's built on hard work, sacrifice, and living experiences that nobody should have to live simply because you're trying to do a job. Maybe I can move on to ask you, I'm mindful of the time, Samira, I don't know how much longer can you be with us?
Yes, and I unfortunately cannot be with you a lot longer, but that's...
Okay. I'll ask one more question and then see if there are questions from the audience. Actually, you've touched a little bit, all of you, on what your experiences say about some of the culture of the parliament and the European institutions. And we wonder, some of those action plans, the legislation around unequal treatment of black and racialized people, to what extent do you think people, walk the talk within the institutions? Is there a disconnect between the legislation we're adopting, the action plans that we're putting in place, and then what's really happening inside the place where we work? To what extent do those measures help you as black women in that institution? And then how do you support each other? How do you keep each other going? You first, Samira.
I think looking back, one of the most proudest things we together as the ARDI Intergroup achieved was one of the things we can be very proud of is the debate that we co-led on racism after the happening with George Floyd being murdered. We had a very intensive exchange with the European Commission, but also in our own group. We managed to have the debates and also to lead on the resolution. Then after that, we were informed by the European Commission. ARDI was informed that the European Commission would come with this anti-racism action plan. You know, when I hear action plans, I'm always like, oh, okay, here we go with a plan. First, see what's really in there. But I was really positively surprised by the substance and the efforts that the European Commission showed, but also the honest language that they used in the plan. I was really positively surprised about that, and that was really also because of the push and the efforts that we did from the ARDI Intergroup. And I think that was exactly an example of people, and in this case, women with a diverse background who have been pushing for the topic and managed to get the European Commission in this urgency mode. I mean, that was the internal debate that we created and the internal pushes that we gave to it. So I am very glad to see now also that the European Commission is very proactive in contacting the ARDI Intergroup. They talk to us, they exchange with us. We even had this exchange with the president of the European Commission. And the Commissioner Dalli is regularly trying to reach out to us. So I think that already shows that we have the impact already by being there, not keeping quiet, and also to speak out. The thing here is that how are we going to monitor and enforce it? Because we now really need to monitor the enforcement of the action plan. And then you come to this tricky thing of, you know, having a lack of diversity, having a lack of representation in the institutions. So that means that, especially from the ARDI group, and we all together, and I hope Monica will also join us very soon in ARDI, that we can monitor and ask questions on how the member states specifically are going to implement and give themselves also national action plans. The European Commission is already monitoring how member states are implementing legislation against racism. So I do believe this is a good step, but we really need to be aware of still the gap when it comes to the presentation in the institutions and then the conduct of such plan and monitoring and evaluation of that, because there is a gap.
Thank you. I'm going to quickly turn to the audience to see if there are any questions for Samira, because she's going to depart shortly. And I see a hand over here.
Good afternoon. My name is Shaka Welch. I just have a question, which is for everyone, but I would really like to have Samira's point of view. So it seems that all your experience is true and a reflection of what so many of us are going through. But in an effort to silence and disprove the true structural problems that are inherently rooted from racism in Europe, especially when it comes to the decisions about the educational system, I was wondering, what are your thoughts on data collection based on the field of ethnicity, and why it is still prohibited in some countries like Belgium?
Thank you. I don't know if you heard that. It's around the collection of data around ethnicity, because apart from the United Kingdom, which is no more in the European Union, other countries don't collect based on, you know, ethnicity, and she's asking what's your view on that?
Yeah, I mean, also in the Netherlands, I will face a problem the moment that I ask data generated based on ethnicity. And I think this is, the lack of data is one of the most important problems when it comes to countering and combating racism and discrimination through legislation, because you need sufficient data and you also need to have targeted solutions based on data you can rely on. But luckily, and this is what I find very good about the European Union, luckily there are several European civil society human rights organizations that are conducting surveys and researches themselves, and they compare member states. Also, we recently had a very important but very worrisome report on racial profiling in Europe, where they compared the different member states because they have asked 10,000s of people of color in Europe on their experiences. And I think in a way we do need to see how we can proactively gather the data based on ethnicity, because now, for example, in the Netherlands, you are depending on voluntary information, and this is difficult. But I do agree that we need to have more proactive researchers, surveys. So that means that also in cooperation with civil society organizations, we can reach out to communities, we can reach out to specific groups in society to ask them what the experiences are. And in my own role, I always encourage people to at least file a complaint, go to the police authority when you have experienced something with discrimination and racism. I come from the Netherlands police. Before I entered the European Parliament, I advised the commissioner's staff on diversity and inclusion. And one of the main issues that I could see also from my role there is that people don't report. And this is whether you experience racism, discrimination in education, in school, on the streets, in work, I don't care, but people need to report. And this is something that we need to invest in. But that would be my answer now, to deal with the lack of data based on ethnicity. My last point would be, we need to be very aware that this is not being used as an excuse to then not improve legislation or to make new legislation. That is what I find very worrisome about this.
Exactly. If you can't show the problem, then how are you supposed to craft the solutions? Are there any other questions directly for Samira? I don't want to take up her time. Okay. So stay and leave when you're ready to. I just want to thank you very much for finding time to be with us this afternoon, and we'll continue the conversation.
Thank you so much. And also thank you very much for everyone who is here today, because that really feels as a support. And I hope you can keep following our work, and always welcome in the European Parliament. It's the most beautiful parliament in Europe.
Thanks, Samira. Okay, if I turn to you, Monica and Pierrette, on this question about the kind of gap between, legislation measures which are adopted and whether those measures then apply to your own experience in the Parliament.
Yeah,
Monica.
First of all, I totally agree with Samira on what she said. I just found it weird that when we had the plenary debate on the sad case of George Floyd, but an important debate that has launched debates on national levels, the Commission has had a special internal discussion and internal debate as well. But it was formed by 27 people that had no experience with direct discrimination, for example, due to their skin color. But the Commission has made efforts. So we have an action plan. Can action plans help to improve equality and the chances of minority groups? It's like with all kind of laws or rules. It should not be like empty. It should be brought to life. And that's where we have the problem. We have, for example, Do we have the Race Equality Directive from 2000? It was adopted, and it goes beyond the workspace or place. But the transposition and implementation, they are having gaps. They are not adequate. And I'm really happy that the Commission has now taken the task in order to monitor and assess how this directive was implemented or transposed, and where we still have to make improvements. So there's a step forward. I'm really happy that at least the Commission has understood and also had appointed an anti-racism coordinator, Mrs. Mua, in order to really take this issue seriously, because we have to. We don't want to have cleavages like in America, to have dangerous situations with the police like in America. We want to live together, and we have to act really now. But one other thing is, action plans are fine. But what about the EU institutions? We talked about the European Parliament. Pierrette said we are 6 Black MEPs. We have less than 4% MEPs of ethnic minorities. It should be at least 10%. We are still 705 MEPs in the European Parliament. It doesn't reflect reality. It doesn't reflect the society. And when you have a look at the Commission, the staff, they have also efforts to do. And they are making in place, but it was also a call from the Parliament, making in place new recruitment systems and processes in order to guarantee more equality and more opportunities and more diversity. And again, national parties have also their duty. They are also representing citizens, their voters, and new voters. They have to attract new voters, and they will do that in the future, if even more, if they really reflect society on their list. We have all to make efforts, like we have all to make efforts to get to know other people from other countries, or if people are visiting your country, to exchange. That's diversity. Diversity is exchange and learn from each other and respect each other. So that's very important, that also the Commission, the EU institutions like the Parliament, they are the lead example for others. So we can do it because we have a it exists. Systemic racism exists. But you have, and Samira talked about, and the question from the public was also, we need that data. We need data in order to make efforts and improve and find where is the problem exactly? Where does it begin? And why doesn't it work?
Yeah.
We have to have a change of mindset, for example. And I can tell you, after my speech on the George Floyd debate in Luxembourg, one of the MEPs from the Liberals, he took parts of my speech in order to speak in the Luxembourgish Parliament. And then it was launched a research on discrimination and racism in Luxembourg. It doesn't exist. So I'm happy that we together with all our joint forces, we could have an effect also on national parliaments to get more clarity about what's wrong and why is it wrong and how can we improve it.
Thank you. Pierrette, you want to add on these issues?
Okay. I think, first of all, diversity is to be more visible in the European Parliament. That's the big problem. And we had the action plan. In the action plan, we ask, yes? It was not given like that from the Commission, no? Because now we have already the impression, oh, the Commission understands everything, and now, no. We ask for the coordinator. And when we heard that the first coordinator will be somebody else from the administration, we said, no, we don't want anybody from the administration. We want a person of a black person or person of the minority, visible, we always say visible minority. And we succeed. Now we have Michaela, Mrs. Mua. That's the first step, and we hope she will be not the only one. Because when you see the commission, for example, there's a lot of problem there. Most of the people, there is, for example, no black commissioner, no one. This is not possible. And by that time, that's why, first of all, I tried to make I wrote a letter, and I was very happy when 155 MEPs signed the letter when we asked for that. And we said, how is it now in the European Parliament is not correct? Because we are 705 MEPs, but there are 500 million of voters. That's why we don't reflect that. And that's the first. It's a gap in the parliament, in the commission, and everywhere, and at all levels. Yes, just MEPs is okay, but we need in the commission, commissioner, and the president too. In the commission, who is president? Very few of us. Vice president. I know there is no president of us six. Or Monica? No. Yeah, no one is president. But what's very important, we need data, and it will be very difficult, for example, for my member state, because in Germany, the problem of the race is a big problem. And as soon as you start to speak of race in Germany, the past is coming back. And in Germany, it's really difficult, but we want it now. We want to start a study, yes, about violence, police violence in Germany, and that's why you have first to understand the mentality of the Germany. That's why the minister of the interior minister said no, because race is a problem. Yes, everybody feel uncomfortable in Germany if you speak of race. Yeah, the past is coming, and it's better to say there is no. Yes, we are all open. We are an open society. We love everybody. Everybody is welcome. Yes, we have seen 2015. We opened the chancellor opened the frontiers, and we let all migrants came. So it was very good, and I support that. I find it very good, and I wrote it even, and I said it's a very good thing. But what we forget, that there's a big problem. Yes? And we have, for example, to define the word of race, and now there's the word of race is going to be taken out of the Constitution. No, it's not taking out, oh? No. It was a problem. He wanted to be taken out. Yes, but before I say something, it was just a problem, because it's really, everybody, how I said, don't feel comfortable. Yeah. And that's all. And we hope also that we are going to work together with ARDI, yes, our intergroup, and Monica too, so that the other member states, yes, that we forget each time we are 27 member states, and the member state of the East country, yes, they don't want data, they don't want to speak about racism, they don't want anything. Yes, they don't, even the values, they are, what is a big problem, because if they don't accept the European value, so we have to think about what are we doing now. So, but what really important, I think that the data, we are going to look at that, we get data, we start some survey and studies, and I hope we are going to make it in the first country like Belgium, France, and so on, and even to try that the topic will be a topic also for the other country. But as long as some countries like Hungary and Poland don't make anything, don't even accept that they have a racism problem, we don't going forward. Yes?
I see your hand, Monica,
Yes?
but I'm coming back to you. I just want to check with the audience if there are any questions that anybody wants to put before we continue.
And I would just add something to
Go ahead.
Pierrette. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very important that we do it right now, because things have become normal. Things you can say in public have become normal. May it be a joke or may it be meant seriously. It has become, in German we say, salonfähig.
Yes.
And that's dangerous. That's very, very dangerous. For example, the discussion about the word race is also important. You have to confront every item, every issue that you may be reluctant to talk about, but you have to face it and to have to discuss it. That's society. That's also politics. So I agree totally with Pierrette. What is very sad is that, for example, the Anti-Discrimination Directive, which goes beyond workspace, from 2000 is blocked since 2008. We are 2021. And it was blocked by 8 countries led by Germany with the argument of subsidiarity. Social issues are a matter of the member states and not of the EU. But I think it does. I think it does. And that's what I pointed out as well in my speech.
Maybe I can add something, because Monica said before, just it's come on my mind just now, yes, that the party, the political party, they have, I am for a quota, yes. And I asked many times in my own party, and I said, but the time we wanted to have a women, yeah, we made a quota. And now we have women everywhere. Why we don't make the same thing to say, okay, we need a quota in all political parties? And I am sure we are going to hear what we heard at the beginning by women. At the beginning, it was always, oh, there is no woman who is capable to do something. There is no woman for this, for that. Now I heard, oh, there is no women from the migration or Afro descent. I said, no, they are all here. But you have to ask them, you have to open the list. And I am very happy to say that our party started with that. And we have what we said, Diversitätsrat is a council, a diversity council. Now, we are looking, because in that diversity council is really pity, by the first meeting, we were 4 black women. That's not enough. So we have really, yes, we have to be careful and have an eye on what is going on.
Thank you. I want to, oh, there's a question?
Hello, my name is Nancy Jokoto. I used to work for DG INPA for a couple of years on Africa-EU relations. I'm French and Ghanaian. And now I'm at the European Research Executive Agency. First of all, thank you so much for representing us, because I always felt very lonely as well. Being black at the Commission, you know, is not always easy. And I have 2 questions for you. The first question is whether you think there would be a possibility to attract more black women within the institutions through coaching or mentoring or communication campaign, and what could be your role in that, or the role of your political parties? So that was the first question. And the second question is whether you would support the creation of an interinstitutional staff association fighting for diversity and inclusion within the EU institutions, because we are in the process of doing this, you know, and I wanted to know whether you would support such an initiative. Thank you.
Thank you for the questions. There's a follow-up question?
Well, sort of.
Go ahead.
I'm not sure. So it's also linked to what they say about diversifying political party.
And it's how do we challenge electoral systems that are actually also the reason why we're not seeing more diversity in the parliament. And I want to give the example of Belgium that is based on electoral lists, where even if you have diversity in the political party, people of African descent, POC, people of color, they will be placed way down the list, so they will never actually make it into the parliament. They will bring in the votes, but will never be elected. And also on something that was said before, how do we what role can the EU institution play in bringing race to schools, like discussing race in schools, whether it's through Erasmus system or whatever, but at a very young age, so that it stopped being this awkward conversation when they are becoming old. So from a young age, people are aware of race, because Black people, people of color, we're already aware of it nonetheless, so that everybody become less uncomfortable in bracket, because it's a decision to be uncomfortable, to be honest. Thanks. And I want to say really thank you, and my name is Adelaide Iroe, so yeah.
Thank you very much. I see the hands with the questions, and we'll come back. Yes, we can. Yes, we'll take those three first. Yes. So the first one was about the possibility of using coaching, mentoring, comms to attract more Black women. Yeah. And your role, what role could you play? Go ahead, Monica.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm defending and pushing forward as the responsible for gender mainstreaming in the Economic and Monetary Affairs Committee and the Fisc Committee. And there again, I also push forward intersectionality, so that it's not just reduced to gender. And what is important is to have role models. I have my own role model, which is my mother. She was a cleaning person for her whole life. She worked hard, but she could raise 5 girls by herself. With a good education, etc. But it's also due to Luxembourg and the system here. You need role models. You aspire to become the same. And therefore mentoring and also examples. And I see myself not as an ideal example, but now little Black girls, but also I always call them Luxembourgish Portuguese, Luxembourgish Spanish, Luxembourgish Turkish. So we are all Luxembourgers, but with different backgrounds. They also have the idea I could become that. So just to have that idea that you can become an MEP, and I'm the first Black MEP. We don't have any member of the parliament here in Luxembourg which is Black, for example. So there's a little bit more, how do you say, more hope for the young people. Education was mentioned. Education is so very important. I'm a member of the CULT committee, so also in charge of education. There we have the problem with subsidiarity. So what will be taught, we cannot directly affect. That's member states' power, but we can give incentives. We can give incentives. For example, I'm also for entrepreneurial skills and financial skills, that you can learn how you pay your bills, because we go out of school and have no clue how much money we need to live. But also about race. And I think also here in Luxembourg, because we have also a colonial background, which I didn't know 10 years ago, but it was in Congo together with Belgium. It was totally like not ignored, but we didn't speak about it. And I did a report on it, which touched me severely, deeply. And that has to be taught. Let's talk about the truth. Let's talk about the truth, like during the Second World War, but also what happened later on. And then, so we had the schools. Yes, I think
staff association. Yeah,
I think everywhere where people get together with the same interests and a positive objective, they should exchange best practices, talk about where are problems, but always keep in mind to find solutions. It's not just to say this is bad, but provide solutions and help others that they don't have to go through it. But I think people with the same interest, they should gather.
Thank you.
And positively.
Pierrette?
With the mentoring, although since I have been elected, I am a mentoring women, and I had a woman with another, but she's not black woman. She's from Iran, and you say before at the beginning that I got that prize, the Ellen Weber, and the academy starts with a mentoring, so we can get many women from different origin. And I have been asked, and I made 6 months now, which is finished last week, mentoring for girls. And in our organization, we said in German, is the organization of the political Afro-descent. I said, if we want that diversity will be visible everywhere in the German parliament, in the European, we have to make mentoring, yes. And since I have made many times mentoring in Tunisia, in a lot of places, I said I can always help, and I am willingly, and that's really my target, because since I am the oldest, yes, I'm really, but really to, I'm so tired, former.
To train?
To train, yeah. To train girls who want to enter in politics. I've made it now. For example, I made it before in Tunisia. I was an expert to train women. It was 80 women in Tunisia, in Sousse, and then in Tunis, and now here in Germany. And I think at September, I am going to get another one. I heard to be a black woman. I am very happy, and I think it's the first step. Because we are, even if you don't want and don't say, we are the role model. That's because there's nobody. And something about the school, I was a long time in school. And racism, I brought it, and I make what we said in Germany, it's a Schule ohne Rassismus, Schule mit Courage. Also school with racism, without racism, and school with courage. It means we had a patron. It was a big footballer. It was in the national, in the Mannschaft, in the national. And at the school, it was really interesting because I made it and it's going on now. I made it, it was 2013, and I think it's, for example, a project we can make everywhere in all countries to say you just need that somebody as a teacher in all school where you are going is always a teacher who is very, very motivated, who want to change the things, who want to do something with the children. And we can make it to say, okay, each year we make a project about racism all day long and invite people from the diversity who are coming. And it's possible because I started in my city, and it's going on. But I want to say I am willing to support your internal organization at the Commission, because I find, yes, it's the good things, and you ask how we can attract people in the Commission. Most of the people don't know that that the Commission and the Parliament have a list, yes, with the job, and nobody asks because nobody knows. When you say, yes, you can ask, go on the website of the Parliament, on the website of the Commission, there are some projects, there are some jobs, and ask, yes. Since people don't have the information, it will be difficult, but I think in between the organizations, the civil society, that's the job of the civil society. That's not our job, that's the job of the civil society to say, there is jobs, you can work, you can apply, and maybe many are going to apply. Of course, not everybody will have the chance to get a job, but it will be one phase. And I come back to the things of colonial time and memories. That's very, very important. We ask it. We make it in our, that's what we said, the memory culture. So it was on another level, and it was on the level of a development commission, yes? That the memory culture is very important. If I take Germany, for example, nobody knows until for 3 weeks that Germany had a colony, that Germany, like every colonial person, were not good. Yeah? The French people had colony, what they made in the countries was not good, what the French, but the German didn't know even that Germany got colony was in Namibia, and with the massacre and so on. And now, for the first time, but now, 2021, that Germany recognized the genocide in Namibia. And it's time that all countries, all European countries who were in Africa, who made other bad things, genocide and so on, who knows there is a genocide in Cameroon, for example? There's things nobody knows. What happened in Cabo Verde from the Portuguese? Yes, there's all things that people don't know, and we have, also maybe with the culture commission and so on, that the history has to be taught so the children knows the truth. Because we have, as I always said, we have a Sprichwort, proverb who said, as long as it's just the Jäger,
The hunter.
yeah, the hunter, is as long as the hunter are telling their story, there will be always who succeed were very good and so on. And the lion will be not good. And that's the same with the culture, with the history. As long as the history is just from the part of Europe. Europe said, well, we have been in Africa and we bought things and we say, but we always said, yes, the European came to Europe, to Africa, but that time African got the soil, yes, and the European got the Bible. At the end, African got the Bible and no soil. So, you know, and that's why it's very important to try to bring the culture, the history, the African history, the colonial time, from the both sides. We don't need to say, oh, you were very, very bad, you did. No, just to tell the truth. What happened, how it has seen from the people actually, and why all those countries are now like they are. That's also the consequences of the colonial time. So.
Thank you. I'm getting frantic signs from the side that, oh, is the time up? 5-minute break. 5-minute break. Okay, 5-minute break, everybody. Okay, so we'll continue with the conversation. I hope everybody had a chance to have a breath. And now we're joined by a colleague, Ojeaku Nwabuzo, who is a PhD researcher at the VUB, the Vrije Universiteit Brussels. She's working on anti-racism advocacy and anti-discrimination policies. She's a senior research officer at the European Network Against Racism, where her works includes writing EU reports on racism and racial discrimination in European criminal justice systems and on the migration of people of African descent. Ojeaku previously worked as a research and policy analyst for the Runnymede Trust, an race equality think tank in the UK. Welcome, and thank you for joining us. So I'd like to I'll start with you, Ojeaku, and move the conversation a little bit, and to ask you, or share your view, how important is the European Parliament for Black communities when it comes to issues with, dealing with addressing racism, challenging racial profiling by the police, or even making progress on different aspects of the decolonization agenda? We started touching on it just before we took a break. How important a role does the Parliament play in all that?
Well, thank you very much for inviting me here. It's really a pleasure and an honor to sit with all of these MEPs. And I really think that actually everything that we've heard so far shows how relevant the Parliament is for us as Black women. And really, it's also to address the structural nature of racism. It's important that these women are there to stand up for what we know is true, to speak their truth, to talk about their experiences. And we saw in 2020, like the uprising in all of the European cities, tens of thousands of people demanding and claiming that Black Lives Matter. And what we know as people that work in racism, anti-racism, is that racism is global. So it's so important that we think about how the solutions in ways that go beyond member states. And I think this is where the European Parliament and the European institutions can play a huge role, because they're regional institutions, and therefore they can tackle some of the issues in a way that you can't just do at a national level. I mean, we've heard about the Race Equality Directive today that was adopted in 2000, and I think that was one of the key pieces of legislation that meant that across Europe, all the standards around non-discrimination were raised. So, of course, the European Parliament is incredibly important. And I think for the specific issues that we know of that impact on people, such as hate crimes, we know that hate crimes specifically affect Black people. We know that it can be particularly violent hate crimes. And I think the European Parliament are addressing and raising these issues and shining a light on these problems. Again, with racial profiling, the Fundamental Rights Agency did a report, a research report, and looking at people who were stopped and searched by the police. You could see like 1 in 4 Black people had been stopped and searched in the 5 years before the survey. So we know that there are significant issues that can be addressed on a European kind of level. So I think that, yes, of course, the European Parliament is incredibly important to address some of these issues. I would like to know more as well about, in terms of migration and how the European Parliament is dealing with migration, because this is something where the EU can, in a way, create rules and regulations that actually criminalize and make African people who are trying to migrate to Europe victims. And we know of the so-called migration crisis that happened in 2015, and we've seen how the European Union has worked to kind of prevent people from coming from Africa to Europe. And I wonder to what extent that the European Parliament can address some of these issues and look at how they are creating systems and legislations that create inequity, that prevent Black people from coming and living and experiencing life in Europe. So I think there's, on the one hand, we've heard about great things today, but there's also this kind of internal retrospective look that these institutions must have on themselves. And I think, to be honest, I'm talking to the converted here, and I feel a bit awkward putting people on the spot because I know that they're already doing such wonderful work. So, but these are some of the issues that I think it needs to be thought about.
Pierrette, do you want to respond or comment?
Yes. How you said, we are all converted here, and in the Parliament, that's always the same. You have some member states who are open for that, for migration to open, but the other one now. And you know that, for example, we gave money to Libya to prevent that African people are coming here. And we gave money even to Erdogan, to Turkey, and Erdogan is not always a friend of European Parliament, because we know if we bother him, he's going to open the frontier and said, okay, they are coming now. That's always those problems that we have. Of course, migration, it will be for Europe, even for Europe. Migration is always, first of all, seen as something terrible. Yes, migration is criminality, is people who are coming to take the job, and is always negative. Yes, and we have to work much more, which is positive on the migration. Yes, migration is not so I don't know, women who are coming and prostitute from East Europe for anywhere. No, migration is something who can enhance, yes, and bring much more in the culture. And is also the possibility even to think about your own situation, because most of the people have a migration background, even if they don't know that. Yeah. We all have migration. It might be in the past, very, very far, but migration is here. Yes. And that's why we are trying to find a solution. Yes, humanitarianism, for example, things like that. So my own party is always open, and Germany was really a model in that way, even if now it's no more like it was in 2015, because we have seen that when you don't have a real plan, you get the contrary. That even the people who were helping, now they don't want anymore to help, for example, and that's a problem. I have seen that, for example, in my city where I have been. A lot of women were helping. I helped too. I had even children. I was the patron and I was helping and so on. And a lot of women say, no, I don't want anymore, because the right extremist, the right party, we let them spoke at our place. And I think that the big problem we had, we let that the right people, the very extreme people, that they took nonsense, a lot of nonsense. For example, we have a lot of young Arab men. And Arab men is just prejudice, préjugé. Yes, prejudice. It's just prejudice. You have people have some idea how they are or they are not. Yes, and just for example, when you see two young Arab men, 2 or 3 together, in the Arabian countries, it's usual, like in Africa, that young people, they are together, they are running together on the street. They don't do anything, they're just together. For example, in Germany, it's not usual. So, and that is always seen as a menace, yes, as a threat. Yes, they are always seen as a threat, and it's no threat. Yes, and it was, for example, in our city, we make a lot of discussion and podium and to explain. If you see 5 men, they are just together because they use like that. Yes, they are not now going to rape, and then you are not preparing, I don't know what. And it's always the problem. If we open the frontier, if we let the people come, we have also to speak with the own country, with the own people in the country, and not to say, yes, okay, you have to open your house, you have to welcome them, to explain, yet they are coming with another culture, but that culture will be a help for us too. Yeah. Yes, and I think if we see always the positive side and not always the negative side, yes, we have the possibility, and I'm really optimistic that one day nobody is going to speak of migration. That's my positive way of life, because I know I had seen that also in some African countries. That's what I forget. Yes, for example, people who migrate from Cabo Verde to Senegal, at the beginning. Yes, at the beginning it was very terrible. The Senegalese had some ideas about the women, because a lot of women came alone. Yes, and in a country with Muslim, where women are not going out, a lot of women were coming from the island to the continent. It was seen as women were looking for men, and they're just coming to work. Yes, and today now is over, because it was at the beginning of the 20th century. But that the things like that we had to explain. For example, in Europe, why people are doing this thing, why they are doing the other things, who you don't know that. Of course, you don't know their culture, but we can explain it, and we can explain it at the school with the children. And we start always, also, we start at the school, we start with our children. I am sure one day it will be, of course, racism is not going out, but at least people are going to have to understand what it means to be foreigner in a country. Yes, what it means also for the person who is a foreigner, he has a lot of challenge too, and it's also difficult. I think I answer your question. Monica.
Thank you. Well, actually, I want to open to the audience because I saw there were some hands up with questions before we went. So where was the, oh no, did they take their question with them and leave?
No, there is over there. A man.
Was,
Is a man.
okay, yes, there's a man there. There is a man in the audience with his hand up.
That's good.
Thank you for the chance to ask a question, and thank you for this wonderful panel. My name is James Cantor. I'm the editor of the EU Scream podcast, and we just had an episode called Bureaucrats That Look Like Europe, Who Look Like Europe, which is relevant to, I hope, our session today. My question is, I mean, we currently have this kind of siloed effect, don't we? At the European Commission, when it comes to the various racisms, there's a coordinator for one, there's a unit for another kind, and I just had a couple of questions about that. One is whether the European Parliament approaches racism in this same sort of siloed fashion. And my other question is whether that's really the best approach at the current time. And I think that's a very, that's probably an interesting question for ENAR as well, I hope. Thank you very much for the chance to ask a question.
Thank you. Monica, did you hear? The question, yes, was, around the siloed nature, so that, you know, an approach that may look at discrimination faced by Roma people as distinct and different from discrimination faced by Afro-descendant people, that's the approach in other institutions. Is that the same in the parliament, and is that really an approach that's helpful?
I think that as a member of ARDI, we can, attack all the problems and try to find solutions or propose solutions for each minority group. That's what we do in ARDI. Maybe Black or Romani people or other ethnic minorities. That's important. It's also, for me, it's also important. It's also important to have the part of inclusion, and that's what I'm doing while working on my files. It's gender, it's ethnic minorities, and inclusion as such. So it's more a horizontal approach, which we also called for in our resolution from the European Parliament. So a horizontal approach that in each and every file we have and we contribute as co-legislator, we raise this issue. And that's what I'm intensively doing, because we are the sole directly elected body, and we represent the citizens. And if you go on the streets, if I go now outside here, 10 meters, there will be a citizen asking me a question or raising his issues, his problems, and asking me if I have a solution. And I will try to incorporate all these opinions and put them in that file that the Commission and the Council will have on their table afterwards. And often I'm really very sticking to some positions, and just to mention that Renew really supports the Asylum and minority package or funding. Renew is open-minded and wants those people who come here also to be safe and sound and have a future, and that's my personal opinion. all the people that came here since 2015, let's say like that, during the migration crisis, they are now part of our society. They are part of our society. They need good education. They need all support we have, and they need the same support. And they need equal opportunities and chances. And that's what Renew stands for. And that's what I'm standing for, because I'm a child of migrants. And Pierrette and I, we have something in common, not only that we we know each other quite well already, but we all have Cape Verdean roots. So my parents came in the 70s, and they got many opportunities to make lives for their daughters better. And that's what I want to give back. And that's why I'm very proud to be part of the ARDI Intergroup, member of the ARDI Intergroup, because there I can more intensively, also here in Luxembourg, contribute to more equality. And where there are problems, I will focus on it. I'll put light on it, and we'll try to find solutions.
Thank you. Ojeaku, your response to or comment on the question. Yeah.
Yeah, that was quite loud. Yeah, I mean, I think your question was about silos and if that's the best way to approach it. And I think that what we've seen and talked about today is actually quite an intersectional approach to looking at discrimination. So you can't really address some of the issues if you only look at one group and, you know, maybe just looking at one gender. You have to have an approach that's intersectional. And I think that perhaps ENAR at some point in the past was very much looking at different racialized groups and looking at the impact of racism for Roma people, Romani people, for people of African descent. And I think in a way that, given the organization that we were, it was quite important because many people in the European institutions did not understand what racial discrimination was for Black people. Maybe they understood for Jewish people, maybe they understood for Romani people, but for Black people, they didn't really necessarily fully comprehend the kind of level of discrimination that can be very subtle. A lot of the things that all of our MEPs, esteemed MEPs, talked about earlier on, these subtle kind of forms of racism for Black women, they didn't really necessarily know about it. So it was quite important to take some time to highlight, you know, this is the issue for Black women, this is the issue for people who are racialized in other ways, explaining what Islamophobia might be. And then I suppose in some ways the institutions followed suit. So they would then create these different coordinators, a coordinator for anti-Muslim hatred, a coordinator for anti-Semitism. And now we've kind of, as an organization, we try and look at ways in which we can talk about the specificity of the discrimination that people might face, but at the same time talk about how this system of racism, the structural part of racism that affects everybody at a societal level, and talk about it in that way, and then, but still at the same time explain why, as a Black woman, I might face this kind of discrimination or these kinds of barriers. And I think we are trying now to talk about this in a more structural way and looking at systemic racism. And I think that the EU institutions are also doing the same. The new coordinator, Michaela Mua, she's a coordinator for anti-racism. So it's not actually a siloed position in the same way as the one for the anti-Muslim hatred. And then we have an action plan against racism. Okay, we do also have action plans for other communities, particularly Roma community, but there is this understanding that we need to tackle structural racism, systemic racism, and that means looking at all forms of racial discrimination. And I think that is really the way forward.
Thank you, Pierrette. Do you want to add?
maybe I add just something about Roma. As a MEP, we are the voice of our community, and we have a Roma MEP. And for one week, even we signed a letter, because if somebody was killed by the Roma, and at least all our MEPs from the Green Party, and that MEP who is member of my party. So Roma community is really a community who is discriminated, and she's a community who belongs to Europe. She's everywhere in all countries in Europe, and everywhere that the same things that happen to them. Even the French people have for the Roma a word, that's les gens du voyage. Also, the people who are traveling.
Travelers. Yeah.
Yes, the travelers. That the travelers, when you say the travelers, you mean the Roma people. There's a prejudice, and we are working on that way, and I know my colleague is really committed in the Roma politics, and we had even also a resolution too. It was just to add to know that the parliament is really working, and ARDI, our group, we are always delighted to have some relation with the community, with the civil society, and we invite even the civil society to know what they want, what they are expecting from us, and what they say. So we try to write a letter or an opinion and so on, and maybe also a resolution if it's possible. No?
Thank you. Other questions from the audience? Here, in the front here.
Yeah, hello everybody, my name is Paul Keke, and thanks to the members of the panel. Thank you for being trailblazers and being out there for us and taking flag sometimes. I wanted to say, it's not a question, it's more like a comment. That is the parliament doing something to change things via education? So I think to tackle the problem at its roots, Pierrette talked about the diversity or anti-racism day that she organized in schools in Germany. And I think there is really something that needs to be done at that level, because my children went to the European school, and sometimes I was shocked to see what was in their school books about African history. And I think that's where it starts, because syllabuses and school books have to contain the right information. And talking about migration, somebody used to say that the human being is the greatest migratory species. So as you said, everybody has a migratory background. Look at America and so many people who came at some point from Europe, not because they wanted to engage in touristic activities, but because they had to leave, because they were hungry, or because they were suffering hardships in the countries they came from. So I think going through the way of education and showing that at some point everybody on the planet has experienced the same and resulted to the same solution, leaving maybe your country, and showing, I think, the universal experience through education could help. So more concretely, does the European Parliament do something to change the content of school books as regards Africa and migration?
Thank you. And the question behind, the gentleman behind.
Thank you very much. My name is Yamando Alexander. I'm from the US. And I have a question, Pierre, in regards to what you expressed out of the 27 member countries. Some of them disregard or don't care about your policy making. Is there a possibility to have financial leverage, because all those countries depend on European Central Bank or other things that could have to do with financial subsidy for their country? Could their compliance to new policy, especially toward, obviously, diversity, women emancipation, and equal right, could be pushed on those countries only through financial means and managing that aspect of not letting them having subsidy as long as they don't comply to the policy that you are making for the rest of the member states? Sorry for my Franglish.
I think that was clear. Go ahead, Pierrette.
It will be very difficult, you know. I know that the last time everybody asked for sanctions for Hungary and Poland, no? All those countries, because they have a free zone for LGBTs, for example. But it will be is a long process. If we say, okay, they don't get any money, any financial protection and anything substitute. So, you know, 27 countries, until they agree on that, it will be very, very difficult. But but that's my personal point of view, I can think if they stay on their ideas now, for example, against homophobia and so on, yes, and racism, it might be that we say at least we can make some, not sanction, but a kind of, how would we say, a kind of, this is a kind of sanction, but not a real sanction. That will be possible. I can't believe that. Because now of the homophobia, we had a resolution, we had a lot of letters, we signed a lot of letters, we complained, we had a debate, a big debate last, on Tuesday, it was on Tuesday or on Wednesday in Strasbourg about how those countries are not representing the European value, that the European value are value who are open, a value of democracy, of a value against racism and discrimination. But until we do something, it will be really difficult. And somebody else, you spoke
about education.
The education, yes. Education, that's R and O, yes. And I think you are a parent at the school, you can change it better than the European Parliament. You see, as soon as you say European do this and do that, people are saying, no, we don't want. They just want to control us. They just want to say us what we have to do. But for example, for the European school, I can believe, is it possible to do the same? The diversity day and so on, and to change. We have changed, as we try to change the education in our relation with Africa, in our committee. And we have made in our paper, so it's not a paper, in our EU-Africa strategy, we write down, for example, that we hope and we want it, that both countries knows that what I said before, the history of Africa and the history of Europe. Yes? That's what it was, the memories. That's what we say, the memory history. The things of memory is very, very important if we want to change the world. As long as we are not going to reflect and to think about what happened and how we can change it, we are going to stay on the same level. We are not going forward. And if we want to go forward, and if we want that our children maybe will be not faced with racism as we face it in our time now, we have to change the education system. But the Parliament cannot do it. It can just, in the Commission, speak about, write a resolution, and speak with the member state. Of course, at the end, the member states are free to do it or not. And you have seen now with Hungary and Poland. They don't agree on all the things, even if there is a law. And that's our big problem. But I think, Monica, you want to say something?
Yes, I want to turn to Monica and ask if you could briefly respond to those two questions. The one on putting financial pressure on countries that don't want to comply with some of the measures that put forward the values, the open values, progressive values, and the second on the Parliament's role in impacting on education content.
And I just wanted to express my thanks for the invitation as well. Hello to everybody in the room. I can't unfortunately see you, but I'm happy you are active and interactive. And also greetings to Ojeaku and of course to Pierrette and all on the stage, because I have to leave at 4 o'clock. So I think this would be my last answer. Education is my key point. And we had the case, I was the shadow rapporteur for the European Social Fund Plus. And there were cases where, for example, school books, the content was discriminatory. This should not happen, and we made sure this won't happen again. That's something we're really pushing for and fighting for while negotiating with the Commission and the Council, because the European Union has strong values, and values I want to keep up high. And we want to keep up high. Most of us in the Parliament want to keep them up high. So countries that are not complying with it, they should either be it sanctions or they should not get the funds. That's the same because Africa was the African continent was mentioned. That's the same. For them. We have the difficulties that, for example, the Chinese. They invest a lot in the African countries. They build highways, casinos, like in Cabo Verde, a big casino, and so on. They come and leave. But the European Union is like a real partner, a long-term partner, and a partner that wants them, the African continent and other regions, to be independent and not just giving money for a highway and build a casino and then we don't care. We just make profit. That's not the objective of the European Union, and I'm very proud to be a European, Cape Verdean with Cape Verdean roots, with Luxembourgish passport. When I go to Cape Verde, I can tell the people, Luxembourg and the European Union, they are there for you, also in bad times, not just to make profit. We want to have an equilibrium because we are interdependent. The world has become smaller, and with the migration crisis we have seen, if we don't care about the African continent, what are the consequences? So we should have a true partnership with equal respect one another. And that's why I'm also a member of the ACP delegation, in order to build that bridge between Europe and the African and Pacific and the Caribbean regions. But I think the values should always be put on top. That's the foundation of the European Union. And that's how we can live together still peacefully here in the European Union. And we should keep that up and even strengthen our ties. And that's what I'm advertising for. And that's what we, together with Samira and Pierrette, we will do in the anti-discrimination and diversity intergroup even more strongly. We need that in Europe exactly now, before it's too late. And I think with these strong women, we will have a strong voice. And I'm really looking forward working even more intensively on that. So thank you all also for your questions. Thank you for the moderation as well. And I was very honored to be part of this. And hopefully we will see us again very, very soon and have another exchange, because maybe soon or later there will be more changes and more progress on this issue, this important issue. And I just want you all to feel welcome in the European Union, in your country, wherever you are from, with your friends, and enjoy diversity. Diversity is key. That's really my mantra. Diversity is key because together we are stronger than alone.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Monica, for being able to be with us this afternoon, and wishing you the best.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
from Luxembourg.
Bye. Bye. I'm guessing looking over the side, we have to wrap up now here as well. And it's really a shame that we're not all in the same room together. And I'd like to ask you to indulge me in everybody standing up and giving a round of, no, not you. To give a round of applause for Pierrette, her long service in Germany and her service at the European level. Thank you so much, really. And I hope that we can have another conversation, hopefully with the other ladies in a room all together very soon.
And I have to say thank you very much. I am always happy when I can speak with people like you, people who are really committed, who are interested. And I hope when we open the parliament, we can meet at the parliament. It will be better for us, and we can sit together and speak about all the things we discussed now. It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much, and thank you for the applause. And you know, now I am lucky I am not white, because I should have been red now. And nobody said that. That's good, huh? Everything is good. Thank you very much that you take your time to came here on the Friday afternoon. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Madeleine. Thank you for your moderation. Thank you so much.
Thank you to the organizer. And I'm sorry if I massacre your language. Thank you.